Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the main view screen. The exploration vessel had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for signs of life. It was quiet work, but Jake liked it that way. No wars, no politics, just the endless black of space and the promise of discovery. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors," Dr. Lisa Martinez called from her science station. Her voice carried that tone Jake had learned to recognize over their 5 years working together. Lisa only sounded that way when she found something that made no sense. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the displays. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, but most of it looked like random noise to him. "What am I looking at?" "Lisa, it's a distress signal, but not like anything we've ever seen before. The frequency is all wrong for human technology. It's using quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't be possible with our current understanding of physics." Lisa pointed to a section of the readout. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 6 light-years away, Commander Rick." Taylor looked up from his tactical station. "Could be a trap. Pirates sometimes use fake distress signals to lure ships into ambushes." Jake nodded. Rick was right to be careful. The Liberty was alone out here, days away from the nearest human outpost. If something went wrong, they would be on their own. But Jake had been an explorer for 20 years, and his gut told him this was different. "How long would it take us?" "To get there?" Jake asked. "About." "For days at maximum warp," Lisa replied. "But Captain, if this really is an alien signal, we should probably contact Earth Command first. This could be first contact with another species. By the time we send a message to Earth and wait for a response, whoever sent that signal might be dead," Jake said. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had been with him through dangerous situations before. They trusted his judgment, and he trusted theirs. "I'm making the call. We go and investigate. If it's nothing, we've lost a few days. If it's something important, we might be the only ones who can help." Ambassador Kate Williams entered the bridge, just as Jake finished speaking. She was the diplomatic representative assigned to the Liberty, though she rarely had much to do during their exploration missions. "Did I hear correctly? They might have found aliens?" "Maybe," Jake said. "Lisa, set course for Kepler 442. Maximum warp." The next 4 days passed slowly. Lisa worked around the clock, trying to decode more of the strange signal. Kate spent her time reviewing first contact protocols and studying what little information they had about the signal's origin. Rick ran combat drills with the security team just in case. Jake found himself unable to sleep. He kept thinking about what they might find. Humanity had been exploring space for over a century, and they had never found any signs of intelligent alien life. Sure, there had been discoveries of simple organisms on a few worlds, but nothing that could build spaceships or send distress signals. On the 4th day, the Liberty dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found there made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. Ships, hundreds of them, floating dead in space around the system's 4th planet. They were unlike anything in human databases. The vessels were long and sleek, with flowing curves that seemed almost organic. Some were massive, the size of small cities. Others were smaller, maybe the size of human frigates. All of them were dark and silent. "My God," Kate whispered. "How many are there?" "One count 212 vessels," Rick reported from his station. "Various sizes and configurations. They're not moving, and I'm not detecting any energy signatures." Lisa was bent over her instruments, her fingers flying across the controls. "I'm reading life signs on most of the ships, millions of them. But the power levels are dropping fast. Their life support systems are failing." Jake felt a chill run. They were looking at an entire civilization, stranded in space, slowly dying. "Can we communicate with them?" "No." "The distress signal is still broadcasting, but it's getting weaker. I think I can modify our communications array too. Send a response on the same frequency." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Open a channel." Lisa worked for several minutes, adjusting the ship's communications system. Finally, she looked up and nodded. "Channel open, Captain?" Jake took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would change everything for humanity. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty. We received your distress signal. Do you need assistance? For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the main view screen flickered to life, showing the face of something that was definitely not human. The being had pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and features that were almost human, but not quite. When it spoke, the words came through the universal translator in a deep, harsh voice. "I am Fleet Commander Taishkar of the Zinthari Collective. Your species is unknown to us. State your intentions, humans." Jake noticed that the aliens seemed surprised to see them, but there was also suspicion in those dark eyes. "We're explorers. We heard your distress call and came to help if we can." "Help?" The alien's expression changed to something that might have been confusion. "You would aid strangers? For what price?" "There's no price," Jake said simply. "You're in trouble. We want to help." The alien stared at him for a long moment, and Jake could see doubt and disbelief in those strange eyes. Finally, Taishkar spoke again. "Our quantum drives have failed. We cannot repair them with our current resources. Our people are dying as our ships lose power." Jake looked at Lisa, who was already studying the readings from the alien fleet. She caught his eye and nodded slightly. "Maybe they could help after all. We'd like to send some of our people over to look at your ships, if you'll allow it," Jake said. "Maybe we can figure out what's wrong." Taishkar's image flickered as the transmission weakened. "You would risk your people to help us? This makes no sense." "Sometimes helping others doesn't need to make sense," Jake replied. "It's just the right thing to do." The next morning, Jake stood in the shuttle bay, watching his team prepare for the most important mission of their lives. Engineer Chris Baker checked his tools for the third time, while Dr. Amy Ross reviewed her notes about alien biology. Lieutenant Don Murphy adjusted his sidearm, though Jake hoped they wouldn't need weapons. "Remember, we're guests on their ship," Jake told his team. "Be respectful, keep your eyes open, and don't touch anything unless they say it's okay." The shuttle trip to the Zinthari flagship took 20 minutes. As they got closer, Jake could see just how massive the alien vessel was. The Liberty could have fit inside it 10 times over. The hull was covered in symbols that glowed faintly blue, and the metal itself seemed to shift color as they watched. A docking bay opened in the side of the ship, and Jake guided the shuttle inside. The bay was huge and filled with alien craft. That looked more like works of art than machines. Zinthari crew members waited for them. Commander Taishkar stepped forward as Jake's team left the shuttle. Up close, the alien was even more impressive. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with muscles that showed even through his armor. Scars covered the visible parts of his face and arms, and his dark eyes held the look of someone who had seen many battles. "Captain Morrison," Taishkar said, his voice echoing in the large space. "Maybe both," Jake replied with a small smile. "Thank you for letting us help." Taishkar studied Jake's face for a moment, then gestured for them to follow. "Come, I will show you our engine rooms, but know this, human. Many of my people believe this is a trap. They think you plan to steal our technology or take us as slaves." As they walked through the corridors of the ship, Jake noticed other Zinthari watching them. Some looked curious, but most seemed angry or suspicious. And Jake could hear a low, humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "How many people are on your ships?" Dr. Ross asked. 2,300,000, Taishkar replied. "Warriors, builders, teachers, children, all that remains of our civilization." Jake felt his heart sink. Over 2 million people, all, depending on failing technology to keep them alive. "What happened to your world?" "Our sun died," Taishkar said simply, not slowly, as your scientists might expect. "Something made it collapse in a matter of days. We barely had time to load our ships and escape." They reached the engine room, and Jake's team stopped to stare. The space was enormous, filled with crystal formations that pulsed with different colors of light. "It's beautiful." A younger Zinthari stepped forward. Unlike the others, he didn't wear armor. His clothes were simple work gear, and his hands were stained with what looked like oil. I am Velther, chief engineer of this vessel. These are our quantum drives. They channel energy through the crystals to fold space around our ships. Chris nodded, already pulling out his scanning equipment. What went wrong? We passed through a region of space with unusual radiation. Something about it interfered with the quantum field. All our drives failed at the same time. Velthar looked frustrated and tired. We have tried everything we know, but the crystals will not hold power anymore. While Chris and Velthar began working together, Dr. Ross started talking with other Xanthari crew members. Jake was surprised to learn that many of them spoke decent English. They had been monitoring human radio signals for years, learning about Earth's languages and culture. Why did you never make contact before now? Jake asked Taishkar. The fleet commander was quiet for a long moment. Your species is young. We thought you were not ready. And truthfully, we had little interest in contact with others. Have always been strong alone. But now you need help, Jake said. Yes, and that is hard for my people to accept. We are warriors. We take what we need by strength. We do not ask for charity from strangers. Lieutenant Murphy had been listening to the conversation while keeping watch. What's this honor debt thing you mentioned yesterday? Taishkar's expression grew serious. Someone saves your life, you owe them everything until the debt is paid. It is one of our oldest laws. But we have never owed such a debt to aliens before. Dr. Ross returned from her conversations with the Xanthari crew. Her face excited, but also worried. Captain, I need to speak with you privately. Jake followed her to a quiet corner of the engine room. What is it, Amy? I've been talking to their medical staff. Captain, these people are dying faster than they think. Their life support systems are failing all over the fleet. At the current rate, they have maybe 2 weeks before systems start shutting down completely. Jake felt cold. 2 weeks to save over 2 million lives seemed impossible. There's something else, Dr. Ross continued. They think if they can capture the Liberty, they can use our quantum drive to power one of their vessels and escape. Does Taishkar know about this? I think so. He's trying to keep his people calm, but they're scared. Scared people do desperate things. Jake looked across the engine room where Chris Baker and Velthor were deep in discussion over a quantum crystal. The two engineers seemed to be getting along well, sharing ideas and comparing notes. It gave Jake hope. We need to call for help, Jake said. The Liberty alone can't save this many people. We need a full fleet. That will take days, Dr. Ross replied, and if the Xanthari think we're calling for military backup, they might attack us first. Jake made his decision. I'm going to tell Taishkar exactly what we're doing. No secrets, no tricks. If we're going to help these people, we need to trust each other. He walked back to where Taishkar stood, watching the two engineers work. We can't help all your people with just the Liberty. But I want you to know exactly what I'm doing and why. Taishkar turned to face him, those dark eyes studying Jake's face. You would tell me your plans, even though my people might use that information against you? Trust has to start somewhere, Jake said. I want to help you, all of you. But we need more ships, more engineers, more supplies. Will you let us call our people? For a long moment, Taishkar said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. Make your call, Captain Morrison. But know that if this is a trick, if you bring warships instead of help, the Xanthari will fight to the last warrior. It's not a trick, Jake promised. You'll see. 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching space light up with the arrival of the human fleet. Ship after ship dropped out of warp, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant star. He counted 15 vessels in total, more than he had dared to hope for. Admiral Carter is requesting permission to come aboard, Rick Taylor reported from his station. Tell her she's welcome, Jake replied. He had served under Admiral Helen Carter years ago, and he knew she was exactly the kind of person they needed. For this situation, she was tough, smart, and she cared about doing the right thing. 20 minutes later, Admiral Carter walked onto the Liberty's bridge. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Behind her came a group of officers Jake didn't recognize, but their uniforms told him they were specialists in engineering, medicine, and supply operations. "Captain Morrison, Admiral Carter," said, shaking Jake's hand. "When we got your message, half the Admiralty thought you were crazy. The other half thought you were making it up." "What did you think?" Jake asked. "I thought you found something important enough to risk your career over. So I brought everything I could get my hands on." She gestured toward the view screen, where the human fleet was taking position near the Xanthari ships. Engineering vessels, medical ships, supply transports, and enough spare parts to build a small space station. Chief Engineer Paul Davis stepped forward. He was a big man with calloused hands and a reputation for solving impossible problems. "I've been studying the data you sent about their quantum drives. This is incredible technology. If we can figure out how it works, it could change everything about how we travel through space. Right now, I just want to figure out how to fix it," Jake said. "Over 2 million people are counting on us." Admiral Carter nodded. "What's the status with the aliens? Are they cooperating?" "Some are. Their fleet commander seems willing to work with us, but there are others who don't trust humans. They think this is all some kind of trap." "Can you blame them?" Admiral Carter asked. "If aliens showed up tomorrow offering to help Earth, half our people would be suspicious too." Dr. Ben Clark, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Admiral, I've brought medical teams and supplies. If their life support is failing, we might be able to help stabilize their systems while the engineers work on the main problem." Jake felt a surge of hope. These people had dropped everything and traveled for days to help complete strangers. It was exactly the kind of response that made him proud to be human. "Let's get to work," Admiral Carter said. "But first I want to meet this fleet commander myself." An hour later, Jake found himself back on the Xanthari flagship, this time with Admiral Carter and her team. Taishkar was waiting for them in what Jake had learned was called the council chamber, a large room with a curved ceiling covered in more of the glowing symbols. "Admiral Carter," Taishkar said as they entered, "Captain Morrison told me you would come, but I confess I did not believe him." "Why would you send so many ships to help people you have never met?" Admiral Carter looked up at the tall alien commander. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because someday we might need help too." "People continue to confuse me," Taishkar replied, "but I am grateful. My engineers have been working with your Chief Baker. They believe a solution might be possible." Chief Engineer Davis stepped forward. "Commander, I'd like to examine your quantum drive systems myself if you'll allow it. I've brought some equipment that might help." Taishkar nodded and gestured for them to follow him. As they walked through the corridors, Jake noticed more Xanthari watching them. The looks were still suspicious, but he thought he saw less hostility than before. They reached the engine room to find Chris Baker and Velthor bent over a large crystal formation, both of them covered in some kind of glowing dust. They looked up as the group entered. "Admiral," Chris called out, grinning despite the exhaustion on his face. You're going to want to see this." "Velthor and I think we figured out what went wrong." Davis walked over to examine their work. "Show me." "The quantum crystals store energy in a very specific pattern," Velthor explained. "When they pass through the radiation field, it scrambled those patterns. The crystals can't hold power anymore. Can you fix them?" Admiral Carter asked. "Not exactly," Chris said. "But we might be able to work around the problem. Human quantum drives use resonance chambers instead of crystals. They work on a different principle, but the end result is the same." Davis studied the readings on Chris's scanner. "You're thinking about creating a hybrid system?" "Exactly. If we can install human resonance chambers in some of the Xanthari ships, we can create a network. The repaired ships can generate a quantum field large enough to pull the entire fleet." "How many ships would need to be converted?" Admiral Carter asked. "Maybe 20 of the largest ones," Velthor said. "But that means your people would have to give up the quantum chambers from your own ships. You'd be stranded here with us." Jake saw Admiral Carter's expression grow thoughtful. It was a big risk. If the plan didn't work, both fleets would be stuck in this system together. "How long would it take to build new chambers for our ships?" she asked Davis. "Weeks, maybe months. We'd have to set up manufacturing facilities." Captain Sam Johnson, who commanded the supply vessel U.S. Mercy, had been listening to the conversation. "Admiral, we brought enough raw materials to keep both Fleet's running for months. If we're going to be here that long anyway, we might as well make sure everyone survives. Dr. Clark nodded in agreement. My medical teams are already helping to stabilize their life support systems. We can keep their people alive while the engineers work. Admiral Carter looked around the room at the mix of human and Zenthari faces. Commander Taishkar, this plan would mean our people working together for months. Are your crews willing to do that? Taishkar was quiet for a long moment. Some of my commanders still do not trust you. They think you plan to take control of our fleet once our ships are dependent on your technology. What do you think? Admiral Carter asked. I think you have already proven your intentions by coming here at all. No conqueror brings medical supplies and offers to strand his own fleet to help enemies. We're not enemies, Jake said. We're just people trying to help other people. Yes, Taishkar said slowly. I'm beginning to understand this. It's very well, Admiral Carter. We'll try your plan. But I must warn you, if any of my people cause trouble, I will deal with them myself. Fair enough, Admiral Carter replied. Let's get started. We have a lot of work to do. As the meeting broke up and people began making plans, Jake felt a sense of excitement building. This was bigger than just a rescue mission. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. Two completely different species, working together to solve a problem that neither could handle alone. It was going to be interesting. 2 weeks into the joint operation, the work was going better than anyone had expected. Human and Zenthari engineers worked side by side in the massive engine rooms. Their different approaches to problem solving, creating solutions neither species could have found alone. Captain Tony Lee watched from the observation deck of his engineering vessel. The U's builder, as teams of workers moved quantum resonance chambers from human ships to Zenthari vessels. It was dangerous work that required perfect timing and careful handling of equipment that could tear holes in space if something went wrong. Transfer complete on the Zenthari cruiser, Kathmara, reported his chief engineer over the radio. Resonance chamber is installed and ready for testing. Tony nodded and turned to Dr. Nina Adams, the quantum physicist who had been working around the clock to make the hybrid system work. How many does that make? 18 ships converted so far, Nina replied, checking her tablet. We need 2 more to complete the network. But Tony, I'm getting worried about some of the readings I'm seeing. What kind of readings? Nina showed him her tablet screen. Quantum fields from the human and Zenthari systems are interacting in ways we didn't predict. It's creating feedback loops that could destabilize the entire network. Before Tony could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the builder. Red lights flashed as the ship's automated systems detected a problem. Captain Lee to all stations. Tony called over the ship's communication system. Port status, engineering here. We're getting massive power fluctuations from the quantum chamber we removed yesterday. The backup systems are struggling to compensate. Tony felt his stomach drop. Without their main quantum drive, the builder was running on emergency power. If the backup systems failed, they would be dead in space, just like the Zenthari fleet. The Zenthari flagship Velthar was having similar problems. He stood in the engine room, watching the newly installed human resonance chamber pulse with unstable energy. The crystal formations around it were flickering between different colors, and he could hear stress fractures forming in the metal supports. Shut it down, he ordered his team. Something's wrong with the interface.
Yes.
But as his engineers tried to power down the system, the resonance chamber only grew more unstable. The quantum field it was generating began to expand, interfering with the ship's other systems. Sub-Commander Zethmar chose that moment to enter the engine room. He was a large Zenthari, with ritual scars covering his arms and face, and he had been one of the strongest voices against trusting the humans. I warned you this would happen, Zethmar said, his voice carrying over the noise of the failing systems. The humans have sabotaged our ships. They want us helpless so they can enslave us. That's not true, Velthor replied, but he could see other Zenthari engineers nodding in agreement with Zethmar. Fear was making them look for someone to blame. Look around you, Zethmar continued. Our ships are dying faster than before. The humans claim to help, but their technology is destroying us from within. Velthor tried to explain that the system Failures were just part of the testing process, but more Xanthari were gathering in the engine room. Some were warriors who had been suspicious of the humans from the beginning. The situation grew worse when one of the resonance chambers on a different Xanthari ship exploded, sending a shockwave through the quantum network. 3 human engineers were injured in the blast, and panic spread through both fleets. On the Liberty's bridge, Jake received reports of the crisis from multiple sources. The hybrid system was failing, people were getting hurt, and tensions between the two species were reaching a breaking point. Captain Rick Taylor reported, "We're getting reports of fighting on some of the Xanthari ships. Their crews are trying to disconnect the resonance chambers by force. And if they do that," Jake asked, "the quantum feedback could destroy both fleets," Dr. Adams replied over the communication system. "We need to stabilize the network before anyone else tries to shut down their systems." Jake made a decision that would either save everyone or get them all killed. "Get me Fleet Commander Taishkar on the main screen." Taishkar's face appeared on the view screen, and Jake could see the strain in the alien's dark eyes. Behind him, the lights of his ship flickered as power systems struggled to stay online. "Captain Morrison, my people are demanding that I order the humans to leave our ships immediately. They believe you are trying to destroy us. Commander, I know this looks bad, but we can fix this. Dr. Adams has found the problem. We just need a little more time." "Time we may not have," Taishkar replied. "Subcommander Zethmer has taken control of 3 ships. He is preparing to disconnect their resonance chambers, regardless of the consequences." Jake felt his heart race. If Zethmer succeeded, the quantum feedback would tear both fleets apart. "Can you stop him?" "Not without starting a civil war among my own people." Half of them agree with him. On the screen behind Taishkar, Jake could see Xanthari crew members arguing with each other. Some were pointing at human engineers and shouting, while others tried to calm them down. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "What if we prove the system works? Show your people that we're not trying to hurt them." Dr. Adams' voice came over the communication system again. "Captain, I think I know what's causing the instability. The quantum fields are resonating at different frequencies. If we can synchronize them all at once, the network should stabilize." "How long do you need?" Jake asked. 10 minutes? Maybe 15? Jake looked at Taishkar on the screen. "Commander, can you give us 15 minutes? Taishkar was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Slowly. I will try. But if this fails, if more people die because of these experiments, I will have no choice but to order you to leave." "Understood. Nina, you have 15 minutes to save 2 fleets." Dr. Adams was already working, her fingers flying over her controls. As she tried to balance the quantum fields across dozens of ships, on the Xanthari flagship, Velthor was doing the same thing, coordinating with human engineers despite the chaos around him. "Velthar, I need you to adjust the resonance frequency on your ship by 0.7%, Nina called over the communication link. "Done," Velthar replied. "What about the feedback loops? I'm routing them through the builder's main computer. It should absorb the excess energy." On the builder, Captain Lee watched his ship's power system strain under the load. "Nina, we're pushing the reactor past its safety limits. It's just a few more minutes, Tony. I almost have it." The next few minutes felt like hours. Jake watched his instruments as the quantum network slowly stabilized. The wild fluctuations began to smooth out, and the dangerous feedback loops started to disappear, finally. Nina's voice came over the communication system, tired but triumphant. "That's it. The network is stable. All ships show green across the board." On the Xanthari flagship, the lights stopped flickering, and the engine room fell quiet, except for the steady hum of working machinery. Velthor looked around at his crew, then at the human engineers who had stayed at their posts despite the danger. "It works," he said simply. "The network is operational." Subcommander Zethmer stared at the stable readings on his instruments, his expression slowly changing from anger to confusion. "But the failures, the explosions, ... were part of the testing process," Velthor explained, "just as the humans told us they would be. This technology is new to both our species. Of course, there would be problems to solve." Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The crisis was over. but he knew this was just the beginning. They still had to move the entire fleet, and there would be other challenges ahead. But for now, two species had worked together to solve a problem that neither could have handled alone. And that gave Jake hope for what they could accomplish together. The combined fleet had been traveling for 3 weeks now, a massive convoy of over 200 ships moving through the darkness between stars. Captain Ray Foster stood on the navigation deck of the Liberty, surrounded by displays showing the positions of every vessel in the enormous formation. Fleet status report, Ray called to his navigation team. "All ships maintaining formation," replied Lieutenant Alex Parker from the communication station. "The Zenthari heavy cruiser Velthara is reporting minor power fluctuations, but nothing serious. Expected arrival at the target system in 4 days." Ray nodded and made notes on his tablet. Coordinating this many ships was the most complex navigation challenge anyone had ever attempted. Human vessels mixed with Zenthari ships, each with different capabilities and requirements. The quantum network that connected them had to be constantly monitored and adjusted to keep the fleet moving as one unit. On the medical ship, U.S. Mercy, Dr. Kelly White was having the time of her life. She had always been fascinated by different cultures, and now she was living among an entirely alien civilization. The Zenthari had allowed her and her team to set up a cultural exchange center on one of their larger ships, where humans and aliens could meet and learn from each other. "Dr. White, you must see this," called War Master Kithra, an elderly Zenthari who had become Kelly's closest friend among the aliens. Despite her age, Kithra moved with the grace of a trained warrior, and her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived through many changes. Kelly followed Kithra to a large chamber filled with Zenthari children and teenagers. They were sitting in circles on the floor, listening as human and Zenthari adults told stories from their different worlds. "The young ones learn so quickly," Kithra said, with what Kelly had learned was the Zenthari equivalent of a smile. "Already speak your language better than many of our adults, and they ask questions that make even our wisest teachers think." Kelly watched as a human engineer demonstrated how a simple radio worked, while Zenthari children tried to figure out how the signals traveled through space. Nearby, a group of human teenagers listened with wide eyes as a Zenthari elder told stories of great battles fought among the stars thousands of years ago. "This is what I hoped would happen," Kelly said. "When people share their stories and knowledge, they stop being strangers and start being friends." But not everyone in the fleet was making friends. In the security office aboard the Zenthari flagship, Sub-Commander Zethmer was meeting with a group of other Zenthari officers who still had doubts about the humans. "Look at what they have done to us," Zethmer said, gesturing toward a display that showed the mixed fleet formation. "Our proud vessels scattered among their ships like pets following their masters. We depend on their technology now. What happens when they decide they no longer want to help us?" "Fleet Commander Taishkar has accepted the honor debt," replied one of the other officers. "We are bound by our laws to trust them. Our laws were made for dealing with other Zenthari, not aliens who think so differently from us," Zethmer argued. "These humans claim they help us for no reward, but no species does such things. They must want something from us, and when they reveal what it is, we will be too weak to refuse them." The conversation was interrupted when alarms began sounding. Throughout the ship, emergency lights flashed as the fleet's long-range sensors detected something ahead of them. On the Liberty's bridge, Jake stared at the readings his science team was showing him. "Are you sure about this, Lisa?" Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. "I've checked the scans 3 times. The planets we were heading for are already occupied. There are massive industrial operations on the surface of both worlds, and they're stripping away the atmosphere and oceans." "Who's doing it?" Jake asked. "Unknown. The technology doesn't match anything in our databases or the Zenthari records. But Captain, whatever they are, they're turning those worlds into lifeless rocks. There's nothing organic could survive on the surface now." Jake felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, after weeks of travel and all the work to repair the Zenthari ships, they had arrived to find their destination already destroyed. "Get me Admiral Carter and Fleet Commander Taishkar," he ordered. Within minutes, both leaders appeared on the main view screen. Admiral Carter looked tired but determined, while Taishkar's expression was hard to read. You've both seen the sensor reports, Jake said. The planets are unusable. Need to figure out what to do next. My people cannot survive much longer. In space, Taishkar said, our ships were not designed for permanent habitation. We need worlds to settle on, and soon. Admiral Carter leaned forward in her chair. The question is, who or what is on those planets now? Eh? And are they hostile? As if in answer to her question, Lieutenant Parker called out from his station, Captain, I'm detecting ships moving toward us from the inner system. This looks like they noticed our arrival. On the tactical display, Jake could see dozens of contacts approaching their position. Ships were unlike anything he had ever seen, angular and dark, with energy signatures that hurt to look at. Fleet Commander Admiral Carter said it looks like we might have to fight for those worlds. Taishkar's expression grew fierce. My people have been warriors for thousands of years, Admiral. If we must fight to claim our new home, then we will fight. But can we trust your people to stand with us in battle? You saved our lives, Admiral Carter replied. Now we'll help you save your future. What do you need from us? Information first, Taishkar said. These unknown ships, what are their capabilities? How do they fight? Dr. Martinez studied her instruments. I'm reading massive energy weapons, but their technology seems focused on one thing, destroying everything organic. Their ships are built for stripping planets, not fighting other fleets. Captain Ray Foster had been quiet during the discussion, but now he spoke up. Fleet Commander, our navigation systems show 3 other star systems within range that have habitable worlds. Maybe we should avoid this fight and go somewhere else. No, Taishkar said firmly. My people have run far. Enough. These creatures are destroying worlds that could support life. They are a threat to all organic species, including yours, is where we make our stand. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They had signed up for exploration, not war. But these aliens, whatever they were destroying entire worlds. If they weren't stopped here, they would keep spreading, keep destroying, until there was nothing left. All right, Jake said. We fight, but we fight smart. Our ships are faster, and more maneuverable than theirs. We use that advantage. Admiral Carter nodded. Combined tactics. Human ships provide speed and coordination. Xanthari ships provide heavy firepower. You hit them hard and fast before they can organize a proper defense. Taishkar's image smiled, showing teeth that looked very sharp. Finally, we can repay the honor debt we owe you. Fighting beside humans to protect our new home, this is something worthy of songs. As the unknown ships drew closer, Jake felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were about to fight alongside an alien species against a completely unknown enemy. It would either be the greatest victory in human history or the end of both their civilizations. Either way, they would face it together. The battle began at dawn, if dawn meant anything in the darkness of deep space. General Patricia Hayes watched from the command center aboard Admiral Carter's flagship as the combined human and Xanthari fleet moved into attack formation. Enemy. Fleet is holding position around the 3rd planet, reported Captain Steve Miller from his reconnaissance ship. I count 47 vessels, all heavily armed. They're not running, which means they want to fight. General Hayes had spent her entire career preparing for battles, but never one like this. Fighting alongside aliens against other aliens was something that belonged in science fiction stories, not real military operations. Fleet Commander Tishkar, are your people ready? She asked over the communication link. The Xanthari leader's image appeared on the main screen, and Hayes could see the fierce joy of a warrior finally able to fight for something he believed in. My warriors have been ready since we first saw what these creatures did to the worlds. We will not let them destroy more life. The enemy ships were closer now, and Hayes could see them clearly on the tactical display. They looked like giant, mechanical insects, all angles and sharp edges, with weapons that glowed with sickly green light. Dr. Lisa Martinez had been right about their purpose. These weren't warships built for fighting other fleets. They were world killers, designed to strip planets bare of everything that made them able to support life. All ships, this is Admiral Carter, came the voice over the fleet communication system. Remember the plan. Human ships move fast, hit their flanks, and draw their fire. Xanthari ships follow up with heavy weapons. We do this right, and we can save those worlds. Captain Miller led the first wave, his fast reconnaissance ship darting between the enemy vessels like a bird dodging hunters. The alien ships turned to track him, their weapons firing beams of energy that could cut through rock and metal like paper. "They're fast," Miller reported as he spun his ship away from an enemy blast. "But they're not used to fighting moving targets. Their weapons are meant for stationary planets." That was exactly what General Hayes had hoped to hear. She gave the signal, and the human fleet moved forward in a coordinated attack. 12 ships working as one unit, using tactics developed over centuries of human warfare. The Zenthari followed close behind, their massive cruisers opening fire with weapons that lit up space like new stars. Hayes watched in amazement as Zenthari plasma cannons tore through enemy ships, while human missiles found weak points in the alien armor. "Enemy ship down," reported one of the human captains. "Target destroyed." Another one breaking apart, called a Zenthari warrior. Their hull metal is weak compared to their weapons. But the enemy was learning too. World killer ships began working together, focusing their fire on single targets instead of spreading it around. A human frigate took a direct hit and went spinning away, badly damaged, but still alive. "This is Captain Johnson on the Mercy," came a voice over the communication system. "We're moving in to help the damaged ships." Hayes watched as the medical vessel, protected by Zenthari fighters, moved through the battle to rescue wounded crew members from damaged human ships. It was dangerous work, but no one was being left behind. The turning point came when Velthair, the young Zenthari engineer who had worked so closely with the humans, made a discovery that changed everything. "General Hayes, I have been studying their ships during the battle." Velthar's voice came over the communication link. "They all connect to a central control ship. If we can destroy it, the others will be helpless." "Where is it?" Hayes asked, the largest vessel hanging back behind the others. "But it is heavily protected." Hayes looked at the tactical display and saw what Velthor meant. The control ship was 3 times the size of the others, surrounded by smaller vessels that formed a protective shell around it. "We need to break through that defense," she said. "Ideas," Admiral Carter's voice came over the link. "What if we use the quantum network? It's the same system that lets us move the fleet together. Could we use it to coordinate a concentrated attack?" Dr. Adams, working frantically at her station, looked up with excitement. "Yes, if we link all our weapon systems through the quantum network, we could fire every gun in both fleets at exactly the same moment. The combined firepower might be enough to break through their defenses." It was risky. If the quantum network failed during the attack, both fleets would be helpless. But Hayes looked at the display showing the dying worlds below them and made her decision. "Do it. Link all weapon systems. We end this now, for the next few minutes." Human and Zenthari engineers worked together to connect every weapon in both fleets through the quantum network. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, energy beams, and weapons Hayes couldn't even pronounce were all synchronized to fire as one. "Network established," Dr. Adams reported. "All ships report ready." "Fleet Commander Taishkar, General Hayes," Admiral Carter's voice was calm and steady. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Space lit up like a supernova as 200 ships fired at once. The combined energy output was so intense that the sensors couldn't track all of it. For a moment, the control ship's shields held against the massive attack. Then they failed. The enemy command vessel broke apart like a glass sculpture hit with a hammer. Without their central control, the remaining world killer ships stopped moving, stopped firing, and just drifted in space like abandoned junk. "All enemy ships have ceased operations," Captain Miller reported. "I think we won." Hayes let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. They had actually done it. 2 species working together had defeated an enemy that neither could have faced alone. Over the next few days, the combined fleet moved into orbit around the damaged worlds. The enemy machines had been stopped before. They could completely destroy the planets, but it would take years of work to repair the damage they had caused. "The air is still breathable," Dr. Clark reported from the surface of the First World. "The oceans are polluted, but they can be cleaned." With time and effort, these worlds can support life again. Fleet Commander Tishkar stood with Admiral Carter and General Hayes on the observation deck of the new space station they were building in orbit. Below them, human and Xanthari teams worked side by side, setting up the equipment needed to begin healing the damaged worlds. "My people will remember this always," Tishkar said. "Humans could have left us to die in space. Instead, you risked everything to help strangers. The honor debt we owe can never be fully repaid." "You don't owe us anything," Admiral Carter replied. "This is what people do for each other. We help because we can, not because we expect something in return." General Hayes watched as Velthar and Engineer Baker worked together on a new type of quantum drive, one that combined the best ideas from both species. Maybe the real reward is what we've learned from each other. On the surface below, human and Xanthari colonists were already breaking ground for the first settlements. Children from both species played together while their parents worked too. Build a new world that would be home to both civilizations. Dr. Martinez joined them at the observation window, carrying a data tablet filled with reports about their discoveries. "Admiral, the Xanthari quantum technology combined with our engineering methods has created possibilities we never imagined. We could explore the entire galaxy now. Together," Tishkar added, "our peoples working as one." Admiral Carter smiled as she watched the busy scene below. "I think this is just the beginning," and she was right. The partnership between humans and Xanthari would grow into something neither species had ever imagined. But it all started with a simple idea. When someone needs help, you help them, not because you have to, but because it's the right thing to do. That, more than any technology or weapon, was humanity's greatest strength. And now, it belonged to both species.